RWBY Volume 7, Episode 10, Out in the Open. So this, of course, was the action episode. It was honestly, it was the exact episode I thought it was going to be. I was like, all right, we're going to get some cool action. Not as epic as what I assume we're going to get. Based on that cliffhanger, I cannot wait to see what happens with Arthur versus Ironwood. For one, Arthur has like a double chambered revolver, which I thought was really cool. And of course, it totally fits his character that his gun would be like the fanciest golden revolver ever made. So I was like, all right, let's see what he can do with that. I have to assume it's maybe the smaller chamber is like, well, all the bullets would be dust based. So maybe every single bullet will be a different element. That would be kind of cool. Ironwood is dual wielding. He has another gun in his holster. And I was like, we haven't seen him use two guns before. So that would be pretty interesting. So we'll have to see if he actually uses both or if he sticks to one and just maybe he'll use his arm to block, stuff like that. So I can't wait for that. In the next episode, I cannot wait to see them actually fight. And of course, they're using the arena as the battleground. I don't know if we'll get to actually see them manipulate it. I would assume so because that just makes sense for Arthur to use that because, of course, being the bad guy, I assume he'll lose, but who knows. But if he's on a losing streak during this battle that they have, odds are he'll go through and he'll be changing it up. So we might get to see a lot of those different areas come back. And this was brand new. This was almost like a weird cyberscape where all the pieces were like 1,000,000 feet high, which I thought was an interesting thing because Ironwood was like in the middle. I was like, how would that work if that was like the actual tournament? Like if you, I guess they would tell them like stand on the platforms, but I'm like, once you're in the middle, those platforms, like once they raise up, I'm like, you're kind of just trapped. I was like, how would that work? But that was a random thing I thought. So that was cool. I'm very excited. That was, of course, the cliffhanger, unfortunately. It felt like a short episode. The last episode was longer and that was more talking, which makes sense. Typically when we get our action episodes, they're shorter. A bit less substance because, of course, especially with this one. This is a really odd episode because it was an action episode, but it was clearly the action episode that was a setup for a better action episode because not only do they have the full-on cliffhanger of, I don't want to call him Watts, but Arthur, I can both names sound weird, but the villain, versus the hero, we have Ironwood versus Watts, I guess. I have to call him Watts. So we have that clear cliffhanger for the ending, and they literally have a battle arena. And I love that ending, by the way, where he goes in and he realizes it's a trap. And Ironwood jumped out of a freaking, I thought it was glass there at first, so it just really caught me off guard that he just jumped through it. And it was just an open space, but he jumped from like 1,000,000 feet up in the air, and he just lands. I was like, he's ready to beat him. Like, that's not like it's about to happen. It was like, I'm ready to be. Like, he even swears, he was like, you've always been a pain in the ass. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't even bother having a gun on him. If he just wanted to punch him to death, I'd be like, that's kind of the look he had, jumping from, that had to have been over 100 feet in the sky. And he jumped down onto the ground, and I was like, his legs aren't made of metal, by the way. Not that I'm aware of, at least, but cool moment. I was like, he's pissed. You could just tell like he was super pissed, and he set the trap. But even though he set the trap for the location, Arthur was the one that actually had the control in his hands or in his glove, and he had like the mini shield, which I was like, okay, that's interesting. Also, clearly, Ironwood was ready to just kill the guy, even though I assume one bullet wouldn't have killed him because, of course, dust and shields and this and that. But he was about to shoot him straight in the face, and I was like, all right, I want to see that. So we have that big moment, which I assume is going to be a pretty epic fight in the next episode. And then, of course, we have pretty much what we've been waiting for, one of the big moments from the opening. And they even threw in an extra character, but it's Tyrian versus Crow and Robin, and Clover is also thrown in there. So we have the three of them versus Tyrian, and I'm excited for that fight because he's one of the few characters that could actually go up against multiple people at the same time because of his skill being a scorpion faunus. So him being able to feel the vibrations, it's almost like a spidey sense. Like he knows where a punch is going to land and stuff like that. So they're going to have to use those sorts of tactics where they do aerial attacks at the same time as ground attacks. And considering it's three of them at once, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I'm mostly curious for the whole good luck, bad luck element. I don't know how much of that they're really going to kind of play into it, but I'm curious how that's going to have an impact on this battle. So I'm looking forward to that. But those are our two cliffhanger battle moments, both of which I think are going to be way cooler than anything we got in this episode, which was cool. Little moments here and there. We got to see, Aesops do their thing. For the most part, everyone used their semblances. I was like, okay, we got to see, as far as Aesops is concerned at least. So most of Aesops got to use their semblances. We get to see Weiss do some stuff. We get to see Blake do some stuff. Actually, it was really cool to see Blake because I feel like they rarely ever use her skills as far as like substituting herself and then using dust as a weapon. We rarely ever get to see that, so I kind of love that moment because I was like, oh man, I feel like we haven't seen that. The only moment that ever comes to mind is Volume 2 when they were on the train. Even though she's done it she's done it way more times than just that one moment. But that, I think, because it was the first moment, it was like a big deal. I think that's why that always sticks out to me. But we rarely see that, so I was like, oh, that's really cool. She used fire, she used lightning, she even used ice. So I was like, that's really cool. I was happy to see that, even though it was, a quick little moment. So everyone does little stuff here and there, but for the most part, this episode was like, all right, take out these couple of Grimm, do this, do that. And then there's some talking moments. Of course, everyone gets rallied. They set the trap for Arthur, so it's like, yeah, we have this finished, but of course it wasn't. And then Robin's like, hey, we need to basically unite. They're going to move everyone up to Atlas to, make sure everyone's protected. And that was pretty cool. Everyone's going to unite it. They tell them about Salem. Tyrian, of course, is pissed. Arthur is pissed as well. So they get split up, and then hopefully they just get destroyed in the next episode. But one of the big moments that we had in this, it was kind of a big moment, kind of a small moment. It's big series-wise, but for the episode, they didn't focus too much on it. And that, of course, was RWBY trying to use her silver eyes. So in this episode, we get her trying to focus on it, but it doesn't work. And she's not even able to, like, activate it halfway like she did in the last season, where it was like, oh, she did it, but she didn't completely freeze the thing. And so they still needed help from Cordova. This was just like, she couldn't focus. Like, she was trying to do it, she was trying to calm down, and it just wasn't working. And, they had to come up with a different plan, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. Like, they used the tusk of the, I forgot what those they're actually named, but the elephant grimm, of course, the woolly mammoth grimm, even. So they use its own tusk against it, and I thought that was cool. And we've never seen Penny do like the separate laser thing, so I was like, okay, we might get to see a bit more of that, in the future. So I thought that was kind of cool as well. But it was like, all right, it's a mixed bag moment. And sorry if you guys, I don't know if you can hear the rain. It's been a crazy downpour in Michigan right now. It's ridiculous, but it was a cool moment. I was like, all right, it's a mixed bag. And I read some comments. I always like to do that to see, what other people are thinking for the episode compared to my own thoughts. And one of the things was someone was pissed that she hadn't used that power. And for me, it's such a mixed bag because it's like, I was happy at the end of the last season where she couldn't actually use the power in its entirety. Like, she was literally just told, here's the answer to do it. And she tried it and it half worked. Like, she was able to freeze it, but not entirely. And I was like, okay, I'll accept that balance because she was able to activate the power, but it still wasn't strong enough to completely stop this giant creature. And I was like, all right, that I can appreciate. And in this, it was like, all right, I can appreciate that she wasn't even able to have that moment because it's been so long since the last time she did it. I can appreciate the fact that she wasn't even able to get to the point where she did it because things are just too chaotic around her. The problem with it, and the main thing that makes it a real issue, is the fact that it's been forever since we've even seen her have to do anything like this, where they've ever referenced it or talked about it. She hasn't even been really in the same scene as, like, her pseudo mentor, I guess. Like, you could kind of say she's her mentor, but barely. She told her the story and that was it. They've been in, like, 2 scenes together. It was like when they showed up and found out, like, oh, this guy made Penny. And then they went back to him and found out, oh, this is why he can't die. Or, this is what would happen if Penny died again. Those are, like, the only 2 scenes they've been together in the entire volume. So that's, like, one of the weird detriments to the show as a whole, where it's like they have these overarching things, and then it's like, oh, it was a huge focus in the last volume, or it was at least a focus because you had a character that knew about it. You had RWBY go through it when they're getting attacked and, like, everybody's passing out. She's able to, take them out, and then they, of course, do the season finale. And then this volume is really focused all on Mantle and Atlas and introducing new characters and showing how there's villains behind the scenes and stuff like that. And we've had nothing to do with the Silver Eye content for the series. So it's like, yeah, of course she wouldn't really be able to do it, but at the same time it gets annoying because that means we're literally going to have to wait until next volume, if they even focus on it then. We have to wait until next season before they focus on the main story from the last season, and, like, one of the biggest things, supposedly one of the biggest things in the series, and it just never gets any focus, especially considering the last volume, where it was literally like, hey, this is the answer, this is how you do it. And I don't expect them to do more backstory on it, just training. Like, I mean, they literally had a training montage. That should have been one of the things where it was like, all right, of course we don't have any Grimm, but I would assume everyone can see the giant flash of light. We saw what happened with Cinder, so clearly it has an effect on at least evil people. You still haven't gotten a full answer on exactly how that played out with her character. So clearly it does something to normal human beings. So that could have been something they did during the montage. And it could have been, even though that would have been one moment, that's something that I feel like could have been focused on. But it's such a mixed bag because it was like I would have been annoyed if she was able to do it and we literally had nothing and she just brought it up and was like, got it. And I would have been like, well, that's exactly what I was glad they didn't do in the last volume. So if they did that this time, especially considering it's had, like I said, zero focus, that would have bugged me. So it's a mixed bag because I'm like, well, realistically, I don't think she should have been able to do it. So I was happy that they touched on it. But also, we got like 3 episodes left after this one, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know. I'm sure it'll come up because it's, season finale. Let's do something epic. So it might pop up again. I don't know how epic it would be if it's literally like, oh, cool, the thing that you did in the last volume you've done now. Although she might do it completely, and whatever they go up against, she might actually destroy. So it's like, we'll see what happens there. But as far as this episode, it was a really mixed bag on that specific moment because it was like, yeah, I didn't want her to be able to control it, but also it's annoying that it's taken such a long time. It's one of those things. It's kind of like the shipping thing, except they throw that in our face like every other week. It's kind of like that, except it's something they don't even bother focusing on, and it's just like a huge element of the story, or like I said, supposedly it's supposed to be this giant element, but we never really see it. It's like it's big focus last year. Nothing this volume, like whatsoever. This is literally the first time, if I'm not mistaken, this is literally the first time they've done anything that's focused on her silver eyes in any way, shape, or form. They talked about her semblance, but they didn't talk about, the silver eyes. So I was like, all right, for the very first time, 3 episodes left to go, for the very first time for it to pop up, I'm like, yeah, I guess it totally makes sense. She's done, as far as we've seen, she's done nothing to train in that particular power. So kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's one of those weird things once again where it's like it's thrown in and it's just like, oh yeah, that's a big deal, huh? And it's weird. It's just the weird balancing act of the show where it's like they have so much to do and we get such short episodes. Like if every episode was half an hour, it would be very different. But we get 15-minute episodes, stuff like that. So unfortunately, we just don't get that time. We get these little bits and pieces here and there. So stuff that should be especially after the last volume, the Silver Eye thing should honestly be like a sub story at this point. It should be, if not the main story, it should be the underlying story throughout the volume as she builds up. That's my personal opinion on it. I hadn't thought about it until just now because I literally forgot about the power because, unless you randomly think about it during a fight, it's not even a part of the series. So it's something that I didn't even think of as an issue for the whole volume until now. I thought the whole volume has been slow. I will say that this whole volume has been kind of annoyingly slow to me, and that's something I'll mention when I talk about the season. I might do a video for the volume as a whole once we actually wrap things up, which I normally don't do. Normally it's just like, do whatever. But this volume has been very particular to me, where it's like I've enjoyed it so much, but something's just been missing. Like I've honestly had a good time with it, but something's been really off, and I think it's just the fact that it's been excessively slow paced. Like the last volume was their big journey, and I was like, yeah, and I mentioned this a little bit before in one of my random reviews. I was like, yeah, but this isn't a journey type of thing. They're literally in one location, and we see the city at night all the time, unless they're going out to the caves, and then we see daylight. So it's one of these weird things where it's like, it's just off. We get some good stuff, but it also feels incredibly slow paced. And of course, we're moving into the last 3 episodes, and now things are starting to really pick up. Of course, that leads to the Cinder and Neo stuff. They're going for the Winter Maiden. That just makes sense. The best thing that came out of that line, or out of that little moment as far as I was concerned, was the fact that the timeline has changed, and instead of attacking Vacuo first, they have now moved on to Mantle and Atlas. So that threw things off because Cinder's like, they should not have beat us here because that wasn't the plan. So that might explain why Salem isn't there, because whatever she was doing at the end of the last volume where she seemed like she was finally going on a full-on rampage, maybe she actually did go to Vacuo. Like she was like, this is the next place we're attacking, and she decided to do it herself. So maybe that's where Mercury and Emerald are. They're with her, and then she sent Tyrian and Arthur to deal with Mantle and Atlas, just to be like, all right, you guys get things going since you can do it kind of behind the scenes. Let's do it the easy way. You guys go over there and it's simple, and while they still can't communicate, just hell on earth over here, and we'll probably get some clues to that towards the end of the volume, and then it'll be like, holy crap, Vacuo is just like completely wiped out. So we'll see about that, because there's some people over there that I care about. So we'll see what happens with that. But I don't know, that's an interesting little thing. I consider that to be like the most entertaining part, because that's one of those kind of seemingly throwaway lines where it's like, oh man, they changed up the schedule, and it's like, But did they? Because there was a table of villains. They could, of course, be all over the place. And there's still two people that we have not seen, which they probably won't get introduced into the next volume. But there are still two empty tables. I guess it would be one, because one of the tables I would assume was for Lionheart. But also, he was like in this weird thing. I don't think he would have had a seat at the table considering his position in the series. Like, he was still kind of in between. So I think there's still two other people. I don't think he was one of the people that was meant to be at that table. So I think we still have two people on Salem's side that are going to get introduced later in the series, hopefully in the next volume. But she's probably in Vacuo. That's probably what's happening. They're destroying Vacuo, and then we have kind of the lesser chaos, but still chaotic, destruction of Mantle. So hopefully that's what happens. Well, maybe not hopefully. I don't know. Story-wise, that would be amazing. I think that would be really cool. And it's like, yeah, we saved Atlas and we saved Mantle, and then they actually get the satellite up. And as soon as communications come on, like the last scene of this volume is going to be like Vacuo has been like completely wiped out or something. And then boom, that's the end of the volume, which I wouldn't be surprised at this point because of that line. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did. And it would be a great cliffhanger if they were like, yeah, we got communications. It seems like a real upper type of ending. And it's like, we beat the bad guys. We stopped the Grimm. They, fixed up that giant hole in the wall, which they really should have done a long time ago. It's just personal opinion. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we end up getting, where it's like the timeline hasn't really changed. They just decided to do two things at once. So I think that would be cool. And it would definitely explain where Salem's been the whole time, because it's like, what the F has she been doing? She did something. Maybe she is currently in Vacuo, which is unfortunate for them, but that might actually be the case. So Vacuo might be the next place we end up going, which I think would be really cool, because if it is destroyed, we basically get what I've always kind of wanted, which is I've wanted them to return to Beacon for a long time, because I wanted to see it destroyed, even though they've been fixing it up for... It's been like a year, or it's been like over a year series-wise. It's probably like, I think, 2 years now since that happened in the show. So it probably won't look like super crazy anymore, but I always kind of wanted them to go back to Beacon while it was destroyed, because I just thought that would be entertaining to look at. But maybe we'll get to see that from Vacuo in the next volume. But obviously, these are all speculations based on like literally just one line. But that was my favorite thing, because I was like, that might be one of those little things where things haven't changed as much as Salem believes, and they're just kind of doing two things at once. So it'll be interesting. We got 3 episodes to go. Arthur might get killed. Tyrian might get killed. Hopefully none of the heroes die. Admittedly, Clover can die. He's a new character. I just don't care about him that much. As long as Harriet lives, everyone else can go. The one dude who has that slow power, I always forget his name, which is funny. He can live too, just because his power is so entertaining. I'm like, admittedly, some of my favorite powers, they don't do the best job at explaining, so maybe it doesn't really matter, but I'd like to get an explanation on his power and how he can like slow people down. It seems to be that he can force people to do what he's doing, because when he uses his powers, he's always standing still, and he tells them to slow down. I feel like he has to be standing still in order to slow them down. Could be wrong. That's just my theory based on what I've seen. So those two can live. Everyone else, I don't really care too much for. But as far as our main characters go, they can live. Robin can live, obvious reason, same as Harriet. And we'll just see what happens. I don't think Ironwood's going to die. And it'll be interesting if they actually kill another villain, because the only person that's died has really been Adam. And I barely count Roman's death, because they didn't do it. It was just like a freak accident, and he got killed. And I was like, oh, well, look at that. Everyone else has lived except for Adam. He's the only person who's really been killed. I can't really count Sienna, because Adam was the one that killed her. So it's like, as far as the villains being killed by heroes, it's been like 1 for 7 years. And that's pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens. I think the villains have killed more heroes than the heroes have killed villains at this point. Or it might be even, but I feel like more of heroes have died at this point. But we'll see what happens. This episode, like I said, there's not too much to talk about story-wise, because it was just cool little moments here and there, and it was exactly what I thought. But I do believe that the next episode should be pretty intense. With the way they did the cliffhanger, obviously we're going to get Ironwood versus Watts. Tyrian fighting a trio should be really cool. Visually, I think that'll be the more entertaining fight to watch. Story-wise, I feel like Ironwood versus Watts is going to be a better battle, because I just feel like there's going to be a lot of emotions in that specific fight, even though there's a ton, specifically with Crow and Tyrian. And Robin even has some too. And Clover's kind of just there. He just doesn't like the dude, because, why wouldn't you hate this guy? He's a dick, and he kills a bunch of people. So it's like, as a good guy, you hate this guy. But Crow has the biggest emotional attachment there. But for some reason, I just feel like this Watts Ironwood thing is going to be huge. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to, of course, the other fight as well. But it should be fun. Next week should be a pretty sweet episode. I think next week will be the episode everyone kind of really wanted this one to be, and I figured this would be a slower paced episode when we get, little bits and pieces, but there's nothing where I was like, holy crap, that was an insane moment. It was just some cool stuff happened. But I think next week is going to be the one where it kind of blows up and we get 2 epic fights, and maybe that'll be it. We get 2 epic fights, and then the sliver of story will just be Cinder and Neo, because they've only got 3 episodes. We're going to be seeing them all. We're going to see them in every episode because they just showed up. They have nothing else to do but go directly towards their mission, which I gotta be honest with, that makes me happy, because everything the villains have been doing that we've seen has been super slow and it's behind the scenes and it's built up to now. So with Cinder and Neo popping up with 4 episodes to go, all they can do is main storyline content, and that has me excited. Do all the crazy fighting stuff over here. Cinder and Neo, who haven't been in the entire volume, just show up and they just do what they gotta do, and that's all I want to see. Is like, they show up, they either succeed or they fail. We got 3 episodes to find out. So that should be fun to watch, because it's going to be super fast paced. That's pretty much all I ever want. Is like, I know what they're doing. I just want to see them do it really fast. So it's going to like put everything I wanted to happen in this volume into like 3 episodes for Cinder and Neo. They're just going to go for the goal, and we'll see if they end up fighting. That's the interesting thing. If they're going to stick together as a team, because obviously Neo wants to kill RWBY. Cinder wants to kill RWBY, but she wants more power first. She wants to, I guess, double up on maiden power. I would assume that would work. If she found the Winter Maiden, she did it. She'd double up on powers. I'm still curious if we're going to get Winter as the Winter Maiden by the end of this, because I feel like they are going to find out. So they're either going to succeed or they're going to fail. And if they succeed, that might be cooler. If Cinder has the power of 2 maidens, I don't know what that would mean for them. Would she go up against Salem at that point? Because I don't know if she knows that Salem can't be killed. I don't know if they know the full backstory like the heroes do, but that would be interesting. So we'll find all that stuff out. Everything else I have to say is just me rambling and, predictions and suspicions and stuff like that. But as far as this episode goes, it was a decent one, but it wasn't really like all that to me. It was exactly what I expected. It was just some cool stuff, some little funny moments. It was just like, cool. Let's see what happens next week. And I'm sure, hopefully, next week doesn't disappoint, because it can't. With that cliffhanger, this next episode better not disappoint. Like, it just can't. I'll be really sad about that. But we'll love to know what you guys thought about this one. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. I want to know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And of course, going into the next 3 episodes, we're hitting the end of the volume. I would love to know your predictions on how things are going to play out. Based on some of my predictions and weird theories based on Cinder talking about Vacuole, do you think Salem is currently in Vacuole with Emerald and Mercury? Or at least, maybe by herself, because she was pissed and was like, I'm going to do it all on my own. Do you think that she's in Vacuole, and that's what we'll get at the end of the volume once they reestablish communications? Because I feel like that's what's going to happen. That's the perfect way to do a cliffhanger finale. It's like, victory, and then like, holy crap, we weren't over there, and everybody's dead. They better not kill Sun. But, I don't know. Would love to know your thoughts on that. Like I said, want to know what you guys thought about this episode as a whole. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.